Hi, Logos Legacy here. So, we can often complicate um, spirituality, basically, as a way of, as a coping mechanism, an egoic coping mechanism, an egoic coping mechanism that's a doing, and doing is an illusion, you're not the doer. And it often just reinforces the issue. Now, what inspired this video is actually, I was watching a video by Teal Swan, the YouTuber, about depression and how it's a symptom of not accepting futility, which I agree with. It makes a lot of sense. And that even the chemical imbalance is a side effect of that. And if you think about it, the brain, the mind, we are not the brain, right? The brain is like a physical manifestation of the mind's conditioning. So it's like the brain is part of the physical hologram that is like, okay, so the I am conditions the subconscious, and the subconscious ego part is like the conditioned part of the mind, but not physical. And then the brain is a corollary. I always struggle pronouncing that word, but it is the perfect word for this. Corollary. Sorry, I can't do that. Of the of that. Now, what happens if your relationship with yourself and reality is not accepting it and not accepting the futility that you're going through with regard to that, then you'll just be what your brain will holographically reflect in that, in terms of your relationship with your mind, is a reality. Yeah, it will reflect a sort of stubborn dragging their heels in a point. Okay, there's a situation you can't do anything about, and yet you're insisting on resisting that fact and just not dropping it and walking off to something else. You're not accepting it. Now, what you get is resistance. You get is suffering. What you get is misery, right? And it just gets worse because the coping mechanisms get more and more unsatisfactory, and you get more and more suffering about that, and yet you're causing it. Instead, you get so used to it that you forget that you're doing those coping mechanisms and that you have a choice not to. Instead, you just blame other things for why you're feeling that way, and then resist more because of that, until, of course, you give up. Now, this giving up can be walking away and moving and accepting the futility of your situation, and then actually that acceptance can lead you to happiness, right? But sometimes, unfortunately, that giving up comes in the form of suicide. But the thing is, it needn't get to like that. But the things we grew up with, futility, right? And this is something that Tilswan is saying as well. I'm largely going on what she was saying. We grew up with futility because we're children, we're powerless. Adults are in charge. And often adults are in ego, so they don't know how to parent very well. And like what they do, and there are things that are hard to deal with. And we just cope. We have coping mechanisms, but we obviously we can't really walk away when we're kids. We just get used to that pattern of just bearing with it, right? But that's kind of like you always resist the situation where you feel utterly powerless and that you hate it, but you'll just keep on at it, but not move on or accept the situation either, and just accept the futility and move on and accept something else. Now, what this means is that our spiritual coping, there you go. Our spirituality itself is a coping mechanism. Because you're supposed to be like, oh fuck, how do I manage this life? It feels so pointless. You feel like just nihilistic grind of misery and going to a job that you hate, doing stuff, and then you come back on the weekend with people you don't really click with somehow, or you did, but you don't anymore. And then it's just like, what's the point of all this, right? And they're like, spirituality gives you this meaning and this purpose, and now I've got something. And yet somehow it's not working like it used to, necessarily. Or maybe it is. Maybe you can just keep looking for new spiritual techniques, new manifestation methods, right? But eventually, like, it starts to feel like the old coping mechanisms, maybe. And so what you need to do, perhaps, just a suggestion, is actually with these spiritual techniques and stuff, a lot of it is a way to cope with how you feel and how awful it feels, right? So, right? But that might be due to a lack of acceptance. Now, actually, think about what you actually do, right? A lot of the time, for these activities, like you might, for example, watch something, or eat tasty food, or there's a lot of things you do to distract yourself from how you actually feel. But why do you feel that way? Because of your relationship with yourself. And what is that relationship with yourself? It might be a rejecting one, a part of you that you're rejecting, or a situation where you're futile, where you feel powerless, right? And that you reject that you feel that way and just try to manage feeling that way with distracting yourself from it, or trying to change the way you feel to something else, or whatever, which is a sort of internal betrayal, right? And you know that, and you're angry at that fact on some level. So it's actually really simple. Simpler than I'm making it in this video, funny enough, because I'm overcomplicating it. Right. So, yeah, just accept your situation. Even when it feels like, if it feels like useless, it feels like you're just like, I don't know how to deal with this. Maybe it shouldn't be powerless. Maybe I know that I have infinite potential and I am all that is and blah, blah, blah. Right? You know that, right? But you don't feel that. You feel weak and powerless, and that people are out to get you, or whatever, you're beholden to others, or people don't understand you, or you don't understand yourself. Why do I keep on these same old patterns again and again and again when I know that I'm this and this and this, right? Because you know that stuff, but you keep on with those habits that didn't work. You keep on treating spirituality like a fix to what's broken. You're treating yourself like there's something wrong with you and you need to fix it because you feel so off, right? But why do you feel that way? Well, it's a bit like hallucinogenics, right? Where you're just resisting the experience, but it's overwhelming. You're powerless before it and you're resisting it. What happens when you resist it? And you're like, no, I must control it because, oh my God, it's so scary. Oh my God. What happens is it gets worse and worse and worse. And then you're like, oh my God, it's so bad. I need to control it more. And it goes even worse. And that's how people have bad trips. What if life is like a hallucinogenic? And you're resisting it. And that's why you're getting all this, because you're powerless before it. Like, even the fact you're here, you're powerless before it. There's so much. Also, you're powerful. I know it's contradictory, but you are actually in control. But if you take away your own control with your power, which you have, like, because we're divine as well, we're part of God. In a sense, we are God in that sense. You know what I mean, right? In the pantheistic sense, we have the power to make ourselves powerless. We also have the power to make ourselves powerful again. But anyway, so in a contingent sense, we're powerless. So while we're under that condition, yeah, what we can do is basically just accept that that's how it is right now for us. Or in any moment, you just accept it. And what that means is acceptance isn't just like mentally your mental narrative or your mental chatter. It's also like when you go off and watch that video or have that tea or that cake or whatever it is, it could be whatever way you cope. That just going every time you just go to that as a way of I'll do this and this will manage how I feel about this. You're trying to avoid it. There's the elephant. Jordan Peterson talks about this as well, right? There's like a dragon in the room, an elephant in the room, right? And if you don't, the more you don't look at it, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. You feel more and more restricted. You're like, oh my god, this is so bad. Living with this is so bad. But you're not actually blaming it. The dragon, you're just like, no, that's too bad to confront. It's other things. It's that. It's those guys. It's this. It's this. It's this. It's, oh my god, these things are such a problem, right? And you're more and more restricted in the corner because like the dragon's growing bigger. You're like, fuck. But you're like, no, that's too bad to confront. That's too scary, right? The idea that I'm powerless before it as well, like, oh god. So you can't even deal with the fact that you're allowing it to be there and that you can go in another room or whatever. Like, if you're in a fucking infinitely large place, right? And a mansion with the mansions, right? And you can just walk out and just like you're in the fucking storage closet. You've been in the storage closet for years. You just don't realize. And that dragon is actually, I don't know, the fucking cat or something. I don't know. Like, basically, just accept and walk away. And those coping mechanisms, you know exactly what your coping mechanisms are. And you just indulge in those. And you're like, oh god, I feel kind of like bad today. What am I going to do? Oh, I'll feel better if I just have some of this or do some of that. And oh yeah, I feel a bit better for now. And then you feel a bit bad again. You're like, oh, I'll do something else. This thing usually works. And you go and do some of that. Oh, and it could be spiritual techniques, you know? So, accept it and relax and stop. See what happens if you stop trying to cope with how you feel, right? And when you feel a certain way and you don't like how you feel, in that moment, it feels powerless, doesn't it? It feels like you're beholden to your feelings and those negative feelings. It's just like, how am I just, you feel like you're a slave to those feelings. But it's your resistance to those feelings, which is why they persist and worsen. Man, I could have said this so much easier and simpler. Look, I assume that if you regularly listen to my content, you like the way I ramble. So, yeah. All right. So, well, have a great day. Bye for now.